I mean, think about this man in this passage. Let's just read here. This man went from a maniac to a missionary. Let me just read it. Mark chapter 5, verse 1 through 20. It says, they came to the other side of the sea, to the country. It says, and when Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, and he lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with chains. For he would oftentimes been bound with shackles and chains, but he would wrench the chains apart, and he broke the shackles into pieces, and no one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the mountains, he was always crying out and cutting himself with stone. And when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and fell before him, crying out with a loud voice. He said, what have you to do with me, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you, by God, do not torment me. For he was saying to him, come out of the man, you unclean spirit. Jesus asked him, what is your name? He replied, my name is Legion, for we are many. And he begged him earnestly not to send him out to the country. Now a great herd of pigs was feeding on the hillside. They begged him, saying, send us into the pigs, let us enter them. So he gave them permission. And the unclean spirits came out and entered the pigs, and the herds, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank and into the sea and drowned in the sea. The herdsmen fled and told it in the city and in the country, and the people came to see what it was that had happened. And they came to Jesus and saw the demon-possessed man, the one who had legion, sitting there clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. And those who had seen it described to them what had happened to the demon-possessed man and to the pigs, and they began to beg Jesus to depart from their region. And he was getting into the boat. The man who had been possessed with demons begged him that he might be with him. He did not permit him, but said to him, go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much the Lord had done for him, and everyone marveled. Immediately after they crossed the Sea of Galilee, they land in this region of the Gerasenes. And as soon as Jesus stepped out, it was like I remember when our lights get cut off and finally they get cut on and roaches are everywhere. Like they said, like, wow, they always been there. We just couldn't see them because it was darkness. Well, demonic possession and demon activity had always been there, even in the Old Testament. It's always been there. But when the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords steps on the scene, the light comes on. And demons started popping out everywhere, according to the hood. Everywhere. And this man was living among the dead. Like, he was living in a place where they bury dead people. That's where they put, Jesus was in the tomb, right? And this man was, like, spiritually unclean, because he was defiled. It can also mean like morally unclean or ritually unclean. So it can be any type of uncleanness, but this man just happened to be filled with demons. Now, a saved person can't be demonically possessed, but they can be demonically oppressed. Like the spirit of the age. It says the God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers. Sin will put you out of your right mind. Now, we're not sinners because we sin. We sin because we're sinners. I mean, we're just naturally born with the affection towards sin. And it's not that your circumstances cause you to sin, right? It's that the sin is already inside of us. It's like taking an orange and squeezing an orange. Are you surprised when orange juice come out? No. The squeeze made the contents come out. Just like our environment don't cause us to sin. It just squeezes us, and what comes out of us is what's inside of our heart, out of the overflow of the heart. So what we have here is, if sin is the problem, there's no human remedy. I mean, this man, look at his symptoms, his psychological symptoms. He was depressed, he was suicidal, he was confused, he was lonely, he was hopeless, he was scared, he was angry, isolated, out of control. He was a maniac, he was a felon. His physical condition, he was naked, he had no bath, he probably smelled like feces and urine. He had rotten flesh, he had old scars, new scars, he was bloody, he was diseased, he was probably a leper. His hygiene was horrific. He was kind of like, if you look at the clinical diagnosis of people, schizophrenia, bipolar, severe depressive disorder, multiple personality disorders. That's what we would label this guy. Sin drove him crazy. And I don't know, maybe the reason why he got caught up in some kind of, this demonic possession is because he was in sexual sin. I mean, there's people in this room right in here where we sit at, you cheating on your wife. There's people in here doing that. It may not be physically, it may just be on the internet. And also you can get demonically oppressed or possessed by having unforgiveness and anger. Like the Bible says, don't let the sun go down on your wrath to give Satan what? A foothold. There's people in here that even here in this church, there's unforgiveness even amongst members. And you're wondering why you're experiencing so much like withdrawal, right? This emptiness. And guys, look, I'm not here to bring condemnation. Condemnation says, this is who you are, this is what you've done, and you have no way out. I'm not here for condemnation. I'm here to help with conviction. Conviction says, this is who you are, this is what you've done, but Christ in obedience is the way out. See, a soft gospel makes the heart hard. A hard gospel makes the heart soft. Guys, I came from the hood. I ain't got nothing to lose. You see what I'm saying? I'm already dead. I'd much rather you be uncomfortable on this side of eternity for a little bit of time than be uncomfortable for all eternity. So maybe he had unforgiveness. Maybe there was drugs and alcohol. I seen people in my neighborhood. I seen a guy smoke something. He runs down the street completely naked, talking off the side of his head. Man, maybe there was like false religion. You remember the sons of Sceva? They tried to cast out demons, and they said, Paul we know about, Jesus we know, but who are you? It's probably because you're practicing false religion. It could be unrepentant sin. Like you remember, even though Simon Peter was following Jesus, he was still acting like Satan because he had his mind set on the what? The things of the world. There's people right here right now. You go to church, you put your money in the offering plate, but your mind is so far away from God. You're more about business than you are about God's business. It's not necessarily the sin of commission. When a crowd like this, it's not sin of commission, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery. It's more of the sin of omission. What's sin of omission? It's just like James talks about it. He says, anyone then knows the good they ought to do and they doesn't do it, it says to them that is sin. Like we know that we're supposed to be living for more. So think about this man. When Jesus says, I want you to go back to your hometown, and I want you to tell how much mercy that God has had on you. What if he would have said, but man, they already think I'm crazy. I mean, look at these fresh cuts on my body. Man, I stink. Hey, look at my teeth. What am I supposed to do? They're not going to listen to me. Can you just send somebody else? I'm not that person. You sound just like Moses. Because God's power is perfected in your weakness. I'm still surprised I get a chance to preach at this church. I'm like, what? You want me to do what? I'm from the hood. You calling on me? God's power is perfected in your weakness. What if he would have said, I'm afraid of rejection and embarrassment. I'm not perfect myself, and I don't want to come across as a hypocrite. I'm not really comfortable in talking about religion or politics. What if somebody asks me a question I don't know? People get saved by watching my actions. I don't have to say anything, right? I don't want to be awkward in front of people, you know, because I see them consistently. Oh, that's the pastor's, the staff job. I mean, the last time I checked, the Bible says the pastor's job is to equip the saints to do what? The work of the ministry. I don't know a lot of lost people. I don't want to say something that push people farther away from Jesus. And that's just not my personality. I'm an introvert. If I would attest to you, if Jesus told this man to go back and tell his family and friends how much mercy God has had on him, he says he used one of these excuses. You know what he would have went back to? He would have went back to the tombs. Some of you guys are living in the tombs of over-promotion or under-promotion. Like some of you guys living like I live. I mean, you caught up in what I was in. But the townspeople were over-promoted. The townspeople asked Jesus to leave. The Son of Living God, you asked him to leave, you're over-promoted because they was worried about their what? 2,000 pigs go off the cliff, Jesus messing up the whole economy. You got to get out of here, you messing us up. There's some people in this church right now that's so over-promoted that you really asked Jesus to leave, you just come to church. I went to a church. Before I got here, I would never said that in the church until I experienced the church. I went to First Baptist Church in Jonesboro, and I went to church with a guy named Henry Blackaby. Y'all know who Henry Blackaby is? I also went to church with a guy named Bubba Cathy. You know who Bubba Cathy is? He owns Chick-fil-A. He was a billionaire. I shook this man's hand. I'm like, man, look at my chocolate hand shaking. And you know what he asked me to do one day? He was one of the biggest soul winners in the church. Billionaire. He invited me to go to Chick-fil-A one day and have breakfast with him. We sit at this table, and you know what he's doing? He was calling like people over, and they was like, yeah, what do you want, Mr. Cathy? He said, hey, he want to share something with you. And I was able to share the gospel with every one of the staff at Chick-fil-A. This man is using his wealth to make friends.